Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Lois Parkes. I'm very happy to be not only your host, but facilitator of discussion today around this topic, a topic that we are particularly proud of here at CARICAD and in our wider region. Project implementation and sustainability. We are celebrating our our regional success story around the development of the CARICAD Leadership Development Programme. I want to say a very warm welcome to everyone who is here. Some of you are persons who are repeat visitors, repeat participants in our webinars, part of our continuous learning and development network. We're always happy to see you. But in particular, we want to welcome those among us who are our Leadership Development Program alumni. And I see my dear friend from the first cohort, which I am proud to have been part of, Alison Miller from Grenada, now a member of our facilitation team. You'll hear a few words from her later on. I see some other alumni here. I see Dr. Pamela Dutton. Pam, good to see you here. Thanks for joining. Tessa Augustine, Tasha Nemard Kentish, Sean Monroe. Yes, I'm just calling out all of the alumni here. Michael Ann, I think Michael Ann, I think you did our introduction to leadership short workshop. Yes, happy to see quite a few names here. No, it's by chance. This is your very first time that you have ever joined a CARICAD webinar. Would you be so kind as to just let us know in the chat? Is this the very first time that you're joining us for a webinar, right? And I see Antigua is represented here. Hello, Denise, Matthias, Thomas. Good to have you here. And I would invite others, everybody, if you'd be so kind as to tell us where are you joining us from today. So I am clearly a staff member at CARICAD. I am the Leadership Development and Institutional Strengthening Specialist at CARICAD. But I am actually, although we are headquartered in Barbados, but I am working remotely, as I usually do, from Jamaica. Christine Barker is joining us for the very first time from the beautiful, I believe it's the Nature Isle of Dominica. Christy Barker, where have you been? Welcome. Karine McPherson is here for the first time as well. Yannick and I go way back. Yannick he worked at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade in Jamaica, joining us all the way from the UK office, the High Commission office there. Earl Green, from 5 Seas in Belize. Earl, good to have you. Colin Young, who heads up 5 Seas, is a proud alumni of this program. Yes. Denise Harris Potter from Antigua, welcome. Nyron from Trinidad and Tobago. Oh, lots of first timers here. Denise Joseph. I want to just big up Denise Joseph. Denise, not one of our alumni, but definitely one of our key stakeholders from the Public Sector Reform Unit in the beautiful island of St. Lucia. Gersha is also joining us for the first time. So now I see what ACTT stands for, the Accreditation and Quality Enhancement. I guess it's a department, organization in Trinidad. Great. Jacqueline Spence Hemmings, I think Jackie, another alumni, joining us from Jamaica. Great to have you all here. Just allowing some other persons to just log in right now. Let me see. All right. Fantastic. I see Denisha Hector joining us from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Okay, welcome. So there's a whole posse from the Accreditation Council of Trinidad and Tobago. And so I like when I see that. You see, when lots of people join from one organization, that means they mean business, right? And probably it is that, they have some major projects that they're implementing and they are looking at strategies around how do you create project sustainability, because projects do not remain projects forever. And one of the challenges we do have in our region, our CARICOM region, is this business of implementation. All right. I can recall a few years ago, there was a forum by the Caribbean Development Bank, and they coined it the IDD, Implementation Deficit Disorder, right? And so we are really here sharing this story, not to say it was perfectly done, but certainly to share what were the lessons learned for how do we actually implement and sustain. And even as I'm talking, I want to just welcome those who are logging in right now. I see quite a number of persons who have logged in from our alumni. Um, Welcome so very much. I see Arlene Estwick from Central Bank of Barbados. Right. Dr. Connie George from the BVI Learning Institute, very, very close friend of CARICAD, very close stakeholder relationship, and going to be asking her to share a few words a little later on. I see Vernanda Raymond. Vernanda is an alumni, past presenter in our webinars. Welcome, Vernanda. And again, for those who have just joined us, if by chance you are joining us for the very first time, please do tell us in the chat. But for everybody, we'd love you to just tell us where you're joining us from today. We can put your organization, your country, or both. Yes? Thank you so much. So this topic is, it may, go a little bit longer than normal. And so I am just going to get right into it, right? And so, CARICAD, we are celebrating 45 years of existence this year. And what is CARICAD? Especially for those who are first timers. CARICAD, now you might think the name and the acronym do not go together. What is that about? Yes, so the name of the organization is the Caribbean Center for Development Administration. And so when we were first formed as an arm of CARICOM, we were originally under the equivalent organization for Central and Latin America. And so the name in Spanish, the acronym was CARICAD. And you say CARICAD, it just rolls off the tongue. It was just such a catchy name. And so we kept the CARICAD, right? And what is our role? We support member states. We have 70 member states currently. And we really support member states, the public services mainly, in the area of public sector reform, transformation, capacity building towards public sector transformation. And what you see on the board here represents the various services and products that we provide. And so we provide a number of areas for technical assistance. So if member states or organizations within member states, and that also extends to regional organizations, parastatals, etc., provide technical assistance to develop things like governance and policy development, of course, leadership development, human resource management and development, organizational design and development, public financial management support, support for implementing results-based management systems, strategic planning, change management, monitoring and evaluation, supporting digital government, business process reengineering and analyses, capacity building very generally, contingency and business continuity planning. And we do so not only through technical assistance, not only through capacity building initiatives, those are scheduled and also customized, but also through the number of the research and the tools that we develop. And so if you have not checked out our website before, do visit us at www.caricad.net. And in particular, I want to bring to our attention our our digital tools. There are a number of tools that we have created. So these are Caribbean homegrown tools to support organizations and member states in the various areas of public sector transformation, change management, etc. All right. I just want to double check that everybody is seeing my screen. I'm seeing a thing here saying they're not seeing the screen. So Roger, you're seeing. Okay, so
Yes, we're seeing.
all right, great. So Curtis, it's a challenge on your end, and if it doesn't correct itself, perhaps you might want to log out and log back in. Thank you. So one of the tools that we have developed is our Charter for the Public Service. And we recognize that almost all our member states are undergoing public sector transformation, and we wanted to provide a common conceptual framework. We use it in our own technical assistance work, but it's also available for member states and organizations within member states to utilize to bring a certain flow and just ensure that they have a comprehensive framework to guide their transformation work so that nothing is left falling through the cracks. All right. And so this is what we call our charter house. And so this charter is founded on 6 pillars: the pillars of good governance, which encompasses ethics, values, the principles of open government and transparency; standards, which involves, service standards in terms of service to the public, and how do we quality assure and ensure that we are truly serving the public in terms of the quality of services, the efficiency of the services, the accessibility, the inclusiveness of the service delivery. Capacity building is another area, and that will include what we are talking about here today, which is our leadership development program. But it extends beyond that, and we do offer capacity building even when we give technical assistance. If we're doing, for example, an OD intervention, it certainly involves a whole lot of capacity building so that we are not the kind of persons who come in, we just do the work and run and leave our customers. We are part of your family. We are there giving continuous, ongoing support. And part of doing that is to build capacity within member states. Accountability, openness, and modernized legislation round off the 3 other pillars. And again, if you want to learn more about our Charter for the Public Service, please do see our information on our website. So, to today's topic, the CARICAD Leadership Development Programme. All right. So, I am very pleased to say that I was involved with this program from inception, and it had its inception in the Caribbean Leadership Project. And at that time, when that project started, I was then working with the government of Jamaica as the chief personnel officer for the government of Jamaica. And so I was involved as a key stakeholder, involved in the stakeholder needs analysis that was conducted right across the region before the design and development and ultimate delivery of the Caribbean Leadership Project. I was also very, very blessed to have been in the first cohort in 2013, the first group of participants to be trained under the Caribbean Leadership Project. And later on, for the latter half of the project, I was recruited and I served as the regional project manager for the Caribbean Leadership Project. We then transitioned to the CARICAD Leadership Development Programme. And so the Caribbean Leadership Project, and what we're talking about here is how we not only delivered a very successful project, but we delivered a project that was sustained and continues to be sustained successfully. And so we really wanted today talk about a little bit about what the project was about, what was it intended to do, And what exactly were the strategies that allowed us to move it from being a project funded by the Government of Canada, firstly under CEDA and later under Global Affairs Canada, and moving to a state where it is now carried out under the CARICAD umbrella, and which a completely different funding model had to be developed and implemented. And so I want to give credit first and foremost to the late Sir Dwight Venner. For those of you who do not know that name, he was the first governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. And this leadership program was truly his brainchild. And it just to show the power of one and using the influence that you do have, even if you're one person, what kind of domino effect that could have. It's also a story about persistence, because it took quite a while to get this project approved and actually commenced. And so Sir Dwight Venner, he was a celebrated leader in this region, and he actually had the opportunity to attend a leadership program. And this is after being in the position of governor of the ECCB for many, many years. And it was so impactful on Sir Dwight Venner personally. It also caused him to think about this business of leadership in our public services in our region. And he rightly analyzed the situation and recognized that we needed to invest in leadership development in the public services in our region in particular, right? Reason being that, so many years after having received independence, many of the Caribbean states, and there was a particular leadership style that took us through that season. But no, we were in a different season, a season when we were now in a different century with different geopolitical concerns, concerns such as climate change, and a plethora of other challenges. And so he recognized that not only did we need to invest in leadership development, we needed to invest differently, because the leadership skills, the leadership challenges of the 1960s, 70s, 80s, even 90s was not the same as what was happening in this century, okay? And so he started the ball rolling. He started the conversation with CEDA and with our regional heads of governments and other stakeholders. And so eventually it was a project that was approved by the then Prime Minister of Canada under CEDA, on the request of the heads of government of CARICOM, all right? And the aim was to develop a cadre of Caribbean leaders, Caribbean regional leaders, not just within public services, but also targeting regional organizations. And the aim was to create a community of adaptive leaders, transforming the regional public services into one that instills trust and confidence in its citizens, okay? And so what was the context that we were dealing with, all right? We recognized that in our region, we were dealing with low economic growth, right? And there was a need to accelerate our growth. We needed to support job creation. We needed to increase things like tax revenues for our cash-strapped governments in the region. We recognize that regional integration is a key strategy that will contribute to our economic growth, leading to the CSME, right? But we recognize there are problems. We have trade deficits. We have forced structural and governance issues. We are also having structural reforms, governance reforms, and we recognize that we are undertaking public sector reform, but not necessarily having all of the outcomes that we set out to have. And that to have success, we're going to have stronger political will, new leadership capabilities, a new formula for collective decision making, a more effective and accountable public service, more evidence-based policy and decision-making, and more supportive institutions. And it was recognized by the heads of government that the development of effective leadership was going to be a very critical linchpin for us to achieve all of these things. And so in 2013, the Caribbean Leadership Project was birthed. It was funded to the tune of 20 million Canadian dollars. And initially, it was a 7-year project. It got extended. It was a no-cost extension for an additional year. And so the project ended finally in July of 2019. Okay. And so it was recognized that we could not just simply take a leadership program from elsewhere in the world and just plop it into the region. There was a need to customize it to the region. And so we like to think that the program was designed bearing in mind global trends in leadership development, but it was also fit for purpose for the Caribbean context. And so we achieved this through having a very detailed leadership learning needs assessment. And there was a very deliberate attempt to create a leadership development program that reflected Caribbean circumstances, Caribbean priorities, and the need to, even as it was rolled out, to constantly monitor it, evaluate, and update the content to reflect emerging issues and needs based on feedback from the key stakeholders. And so soliciting and the feedback, engaging stakeholders continuously in the feedback process was absolutely critical. And this was how we're able to develop a leadership development program that has remained relevant, responsive. And if it did not have the relevance and responsiveness, there's no way it was going to be sustainable. And so this was one of the things that we learned out of this project success. You have to think about what are the needs of the stakeholders we're trying to serve, and not just to do those need assessment at a one point in time, but to constantly be updating it, constantly keeping the stakeholders in the loop, and constantly reading what it is that is needed, all right, and wanted. That's also another thing to think about. You know, people can need many things, but do they want it? And so you have to be responsive so that you're catering not only to needs, but also to wants. So Emily, I see your hand raised. Roger, if you could allow Emily to unmute, I can take your question, although we're going to come to a time of question and answers and discussion, but since your hand is up, let me take that.
Yes, thank you so much. I
Hi,
appreciate it.
Emily.
You can hear me clearly?
Very clearly.
Right, and my camera is not on as yet.
No, it's fine. You don't necessarily, you don't have to turn on your camera necessarily.
Right, great, thanks. So just a quickie, very, very quick statement here. I heard your interest, the very interesting history, and it's all, you know, very important Caribbean Leadership Development Project program. However, there's a part that I'm not hearing, which is the technical working group. There was a technical working
but Emily, you don't let me finish.
Okay,
You jump
all right.
in before I finish.
Because the technical working group came long before any cohort started. So I've not heard it. So I had to
No,
pull up the
I am
document.
coming to that, my dear.
All
I
right,
am coming
cool.
to that.
I will wait.
All
I'll
right.
listen on. Thanks.
Yes, Emily's keeping me honest. Very much so. And so what Emily is referring to is it's also part of the stakeholder engagement. So apart from engaging, literally, there were literally hundreds of interviews that were done with stakeholders, and stakeholders right across the board. Senior public sector leader, union leaders, key persons like myself, you know, in charge of human resources, learning and development, politicians, not just serving, but also, as far as it was possible, opposition, members of parliament, etc. But also in terms of pulling all of that information together, there was a technical working group, yes, made up of Canadians, but also a very heavy Caribbean contingent who was this carrying out this learning needs assessment, but also working assiduously on the design of the program, so that then that was what was rolled out in 2013. All right. And so the project as a whole had 5 pillars. The most noticeable pillar, and most of the resources did go into the leadership development program. And at the end of the project, there were 12 cohorts of the leadership development program that were delivered. And there were 3 levels of programming that was developed: a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3. All right. The level 1 and 2, well, eventually merged into one, they were very, very similar. But the level 2 was targeted at mid-level leaders. Okay. And but there were other pillars as well. There was the enabling environment and research pillars. If there are initially separate pillars, but eventually merged into one, culminating into a very interesting piece of research that was done under the project called Enabling Environment for Leadership Development and Practice. And out of that was developed an enabling environment assessment tool, which it was automated. A whole software was developed around it, and it's a tool that continues to be used. And we're actually working right now to even revamp that tool using more recent artificial intelligence enabled tools to make it even better. And so we will be sharing more about that. There was also the pillar of the Continuous Learning and Development Network, the CLDN, which is this webinar series that we do is a major outcome of that. And that is really to recognize that learning and development didn't only happen in the learning in the program itself, but that leaders, stakeholders needed to continuously learn and develop and to network and to share experiences. And so that was important for the sustainability. And the community of practice really was focused on our training units in our respective government, participating governments, and was really aimed at helping to, build capacity within the training units so that they could also offer some of the leadership development programming at the local and national levels. Now, sustainability, you see an acronym here, which is CCLE. And so when it came to the sustainability of the project, this was something that was always the ultimate outcome of the project. That it wasn't just about having the project deliver these training programs and deliver these various outputs, but ultimately the intention was to leave the region with a sustainable leadership development program that could continue after the project came to an end. And so how that was conceptualized went through many iterations. And so at a point, they felt that we should create a center to continue this. But again, we had to have the continuous stakeholder engagement. And so the stakeholders themselves, after much consideration, deep thinking, and research, and just looking at our context, it was recognized that we really could not, as a region, afford to fund yet another regional institution, right? If some of you know anything about our regional institutions, we have challenges already in terms of our funding. And so adding to that would not make it sustainable at all. And so instead, it was unanimously decided that the leadership development programming would be sustained by putting it into an existing regional organization, which is CARICAD. And some people may not know, but in fact, the Caribbean Leadership Project initially was a project within CARICAD. And so the programming, as it were, came back home. All right. I'm just looking at the comments here in the chat. And so we're seeing again just comments about the technical working group. And so Emily worked in that group. Rosamond Warrington, our colleague here at CARICAD, was also a member of that technical working group. And I think it's so important that we understood that, yes, and what I appreciated about our funders is that they didn't come and say, take this model that we have in Canada and use it here. But no, they engage practitioners, subject matter experts, stakeholders in the region to create that fit for purpose leadership development program for our region. Okay. And so there are quite a few targets. I'm just going to zero in on some of the main targets. And so one was that we would have 12 national governments participating in the program under the Caribbean Leadership Project. And the target number of persons to be trained under the project was 250 persons at the very senior levels, permanent secretaries, heads of department levels, mid-level, senior mid-level leaders from our governments and our regional institutions. In the end, the target was surpassed and 297 were trained. All right. So what were the critical success factors? And I hopefully would have summarized them here. Okay. Now, one of the challenges that we faced is that being a project, it was generously funded. It was generously funded. At first, it was mainly, in-person delivery. And so the project, the first two cohorts, the project funded everything. Oh my goodness. I was in cohort 1. It was wonderful. We flew from country to country, from module 1, module 2, module 3. I remember module 4 in cohort 1, we did benchmarking studies in Canada. Oh, yes. Some went to Prince Edward Island, some here, some there. And then I remember the last module being in Jamaica, culminating in the first leadership symposium in Kingston, Jamaica. And so we when we estimated what was the cost per person, depending on whether it was a level 1 or level 3 program, it ranged anywhere from 15,000 to 25,000 US dollars per participant. Okay, so pretty costly, right? In the design of the program, one of the things that was built in was cost sharing. And so by cohort 3, that cost sharing model started. This was very important. So the project still paid for the bulk of the expenses of the programs, but governments were invited to participate and to support. And so they would undertake, I believe, the airfares and the per diems. And so the cost of the delivery, the conference catering, the hotel accommodation, the lunches, and you get a hotel accommodation would bear in mind, breakfast as well. So the cost wasn't necessarily burdensome for the member states and the regional organizations, but it was a very important part of setting the platform for sustainability. Okay, because once the project ended, there was no seed money that was available to CARICAD to continue. All right. So, how are we going to sustain it when we don't have donor funding? Okay. We have to pay for it ourselves, right? And how are we going to do that? So, some of the critical success factors is definitely stakeholder engagement. Okay. Stakeholder engagement was critical. And this took on many dimensions, okay? So I think one of the best things that happened was that when we started the leadership development program, it started with persons at the permanent secretary or equivalent levels. These were the key decision makers. And that was critical because the idea was if you could create converts out of the key decision makers, they will continue to support the leadership program. They will be sending their persons on the program. They'll support it in other ways, when key decisions were to be taken. And that continues to be so. And so even now, persons who come to our leadership programs, many of them are supervised by alumni, or alumni have some decision-making power now. And some of these persons who, when they were in cohort one, or a few have retired since, but they continue to be influential part of that community. And some who, did in later cohorts, maybe they were not permanent secretaries. Many are now in those positions. I think of Augusta Degazon, current cabinet secretary, government of St. Lucia, for example. All right. I spoke at length about, the technical working group having regional counterparts in the delivery team. And so there was always persons on the delivery team from the Caribbean. And I can tell you, as the program went on, actually became more and more, almost fully, a Caribbean facilitation team. All right. And also the project, once it started, was steered by a project steering committee, also made up of key stakeholders in who could make critical decisions, particularly as they related to sustainability. And there's also marketing. Marketing. The Caribbean Leadership Project invested a lot in how it markets its services and its products. And that has kept a pace on the CARICAD, right? Keeping stakeholders apprised of the happenings, when's the next webinar, the next program, sharing success stories or bright spots, as we love to call them here, and getting stakeholders to share their story, their experiences of implementing public sector reform, implementing projects that they started under the leadership program and how that was going, right? So stakeholder engagement is absolutely critical for project sustainability, right? You cannot go it alone. The little project team alone will not make it successful. You must engage your stakeholders, and you have to decide what are those stakeholder strategies that are going to work for you. And for us, there were, of course, the formal stakeholder engagement processes, and there was a lot of informal as well. A lot of times key decisions had to be, you had to rally your stakeholders one phone call at a time, one meeting at a time. You book them up we love to say book up in Jamaica. We meet them up in the airport and you have a little impromptu, informal discussion. All of that was critical to keeping your stakeholders informed and engaged, okay? The shared funding model, I spoke about that already under the Caribbean Leadership Project. This became very important because, as I said before, there was no seed money to continue the Caribbean Leadership Project under the CARICAD banner. All right. And so it meant that member states would have to pay for the leadership program. How are we going to price it in a way that was affordable? And so we're able to come up with a funding model that was actually aligned to what member states were already paying under the Caribbean Leadership Project. And that is what are one of the guiding principles that helped us to price the leadership programs, okay? I think it's absolutely important to talk about the creation under the project of standard operating procedures and documentation around the project and the leadership development programming. And I want to give credit here to the first regional project manager, June Underwood, for this. And also to one of the main lead facilitators under the project, Mr. James Clements, who really saw to it that the documentation of the leadership programs, all the materials of facilitation, guides, everything that was needed was properly documented, and still, and that documentation process continues and exists. That was actually very, very important as a part of capacity building and knowledge sharing for future facilitators, right? The use of technology became literally the linchpin on which the success rests of the program. And so by the time we were ready to launch a mid-level leadership program, the then project director, Colleen Rossiter, insisted, even though I can honestly say we were very resistant to that change, but he said, no, we have to move to a hybrid delivery model, because the full in-person delivery, the cost of it was not sustainable. And so we started with the level 3 program. And so I see Pamela dotting it here. So Pamela was a part of that guinea pig, that guinea pig program, but it was hybrid, where it's both in person as well as online. And that created not only a model that we could sustain in terms of cost of delivery, but certainly by the time we're talking about 2020 and we were hit with the COVID-19 pandemic, we were able to deliver fully virtually. All right. Capacity building was also very important, and the project invested in developing the capacity of persons who already had very good facilitation skills, but also needed other skills. And so there's investment in training for persons as executive coaches, learning how to design and deliver this kind of programming virtually and in other areas as well. That was absolutely important, right? And we had to create ultimately a new business model, a business model that was largely dependent on virtual delivery. And so now we offer most of our programs virtually, especially our scheduled programs, and even some of our customized programs are offered virtually as well, although we do have the ability to offer in-person training, right? We also recognize that we had to have expanded offerings as well. And so in the next slide here, where are we now? And so we expanded our offerings. So what was a level 3 leadership development program under the Caribbean Leadership Project became our 3-month fully virtual mid-level leadership development program. And the call for applications for that is now open. One of our flagship programs, always in high demand, the Leading Change Workshop. This was new and really emerged really out of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we originally had this as the one scheduled program that would be in person, right? And it was designed a particular way. And then we started to advertise it, and then COVID-19 hit. And of course, we could not deliver it in person, but the demand for it was still very great. Stakeholders kept on asking for it because the COVID-19 pandemic created such this sharp, pressed need for public service leaders to know how to adapt to the changes that were coming as a result of this pandemic. And so we developed a fully virtual Leading Change workshop. It's a 4-day workshop that typically runs in January of each year. What was the merging of the level 1 and level 2 program became our 6 months fully virtual transformational leadership development program. All right. And we have been able to use the design from the Caribbean Leadership Project and constantly added to it and continue to add to it. And so what we have done is, for instance, integrated our public our scheme of a public sector transformation, into our leading change workshops, into our transformational leadership development program. Just a number of elements have been added to the program. Elements around smart government, digital government, elements around policy development, leading transformation, etc. All right. Um, our programs continue to be the most value for money that you'll get for this kind of program, not just in terms of the quality of the materials and the topics that are covered, but also what you get in the program. And so here are some of the value adds that we have found, particularly because we deliver it virtually. One is that it actually becomes more cost effective for our customers. And so rather than having persons off of work for a whole week, for example, typically classes are just either one day or half a day, right? And it's stretched out over a period of time. So you can allow for, a better balance between learning and work. It's also about learning and work integration, as we always have assignments that relate to people's work. And so whether it's a transformational leadership program where you are required to develop a leadership stretch project, which is really a work project, something you have to be doing in your job as a part of your job and applying your learning to it, right? And in the case of the mid-level leadership program, we call it the improvement project, right? And so we have had some fantastic projects that have been implemented successfully by our participants. And more, perhaps one of the most recent ones is business continuity planning for the Cabinet Office of the British Virgin Islands, which leads me to our customized programs. And so we have been able to use the materials plus do either additional customization for specific governments and organizations. And so some of the places that we have done customized leadership development programming for, and some of the persons are from those cohorts here, Central Bank of Barbados, Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, the government of the British Virgin Islands, the government of St. Lucia, just to name a few, the government of Montserrat as well. The other thing that makes our programs good value for money is that for our mid-level leadership program and the transformational leadership development program, and for many of our customized programs, when requested, they commence with each participant doing an emotional intelligence assessment. This is something that was started on the Caribbean Leadership Project and continues, because this is a recognition that there is a strong correlation between leadership effectiveness and emotional intelligence. And so you always start off with that assessment being done and having a one-on-one debrief about your own level of emotional intelligence to help you identify your areas of strengths, your areas for growth, and to identify a strategy for that. For our leadership development, transformational leadership development program, it is also married with one-on-one executive coaching as well as action learning. There is no other program for that price, for that length, covering all of those topics that you can get for that price. All right. And in fact, can I tell you that within the 6-year period that we have been running it, we actually did a price drop. Okay. And so, honestly, value for money. And so, with developing expanded offerings, customized offerings, shorter offerings, we still have the long offerings. We have today trained over 2,000 persons. All right. Over 2,000 persons and counting. All right. We say started from 2018 because we started to deliver the CARICAD Leadership Development Program under the CARICAD banner prior to the end of the Caribbean Leadership Project. And so 2 leadership programs actually took place before, which was the Senior Leadership Program for the government of St. Lucia, as well as a regional leadership program for leaders in statistical offices around the region. We continue our webinar series, as you can tell, because you're a part of it. Very strong, one of the most highly attended webinars in our region. And we have to acknowledge our partners who we have had the blessing of being able to collaborate with them in our delivery of our CARICAD Leadership Development Program. We have a very strong partnership with United Nations Department for Economic and Social Affairs, and they have allowed us to offer not specifically leadership programs, but a lot of capacity building around changing mindsets and digital government and digital transformation that supports our leadership programs. Other partners include CURF SPC, who they deliver part of the program around risk assessment and analysis. CTU has helped us, and ECLAC with delivering set elements around smart government, digital government, SEDIMA around climate change, as well as the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator. And so those have really helped us to keep the program going, to keep the knowledge continue to be refreshed and fit for purpose. And so what is the next frontier? We are, through another collaboration, working to figure out how can we use artificial intelligence even more in our CARICAD Leadership Development Programming, not only for our back office operations, but also for enhancing the delivery. We, like I said before, our digital explainer series will tell you a lot about our various tools that we've developed here at CARICAD to support public sector transformation. And we're actually in the process of also doing an even deeper integration of those tools into our programs. Because ultimately, we are not, yes, it is good to train leaders for the sake of training leaders, but really the focus ultimately is on institutional strengthening, and it's about creating the capacity so that we can realize our public sector transformation goals, and ultimately then how the public sector can facilitate economic, socioeconomic growth and development for our member states, right? And we are also, through our partnership with UNDESA, also looking for even deeper integration of the Sustainable Development Goals and some of the supporting tools and frameworks developed through the United Nations. To just give an example, tools around the changing mindsets and the Quintet for Change into our leadership development offerings as well. And so with that, I hope I would have shared, the story and what it is that allowed us to achieve sustainability of and success in the CARICAD Leadership Development Program. And so at this time, I am going to invite a few stakeholders who are with us just to share a few thoughts and perspectives. No, I know that I was expecting somebody from the BVI, but they are having some power outages issues here. And so they may be able to rejoin. But let me call on Alison Miller. And so Alison is currently one of our executive coaches with the CARICAD Leadership Development Program. But Alison, like myself, was in cohort 1 when she was permanent secretary with the government of Grenada, Petit Martinique, and Carriacou. Yes, Alison, I remember the full name. And so I just wanted Alison just to share a few of our own reflections. Firstly, as somebody who was in the program, and also as somebody now who's on the facilitation end, part of the facilitation team in the program. So Alison, I wonder if you're able to unmute. You should be able to unmute. All right, I'm not hearing Alison at this time. Oh, Dr. George is back with us. Great. Dr. George, I think I might be missing your name. Norji, if you'd be so good enough just to help me to help Dr. George to unmute. Oh, there I see your name now. So, Dr. Connie George is the head of the BVI Public Sector Learning and Development Institute. We are currently working with them to develop, we're delivering Core 3 of a customized emerging leaders development program. And so, Dr. George, thank you so much for joining us. Alison, I'll come to you right after Dr. George, so don't go away. But Dr. George, I would invite you just to share a few reflections, being a stakeholder stroke customer client of the CARICAD Leadership Development Program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Parkes, and I'm so delighted to be here this morning. My name is Connie George, and I am the director of the Virgin Islands Public Service Learning Institute, brand new initiative by the government of the Virgin Islands. We have always had training, and I have to say that CARICAD has always been one of the persons that we have worked with over the years. We are now kind of improving or advancing and developing our level of training for public officers, and hence the Virgin Islands Public Service Learning Institute, whose sole responsibility is to train, upskill, help persons who are on the job to improve while they're on the job through education. And Dr. Parkes have become quite a colleague and member of our partnership, and we are so grateful. So I'm pleased to share some insights on the transformative initiative that has helped shape the future of leadership within the Virgin Islands Public Service, which is the CARICAD Leadership and Development Program. This program, delivered by the Caribbean Center of Development Administration, is specifically designed to cultivate visionary and effective leadership in the Caribbean public sector. That's my summarizing of it. It equips participants with the knowledge, tools, and mindset to lead with purpose, agility, and integrity in an ever-evolving governance landscape. So here in the Virgin Islands, I came on to this particular initiative, the Virgin Islands Public Service Learning Institute, in 2023. And one of the things that I was tasked with was to find a tool, find a vehicle through which we can train emerging leaders, leaders that will be taking over the public service in the not too distant future. What was the reason for that? We recognize the urgency of strengthening our leadership pipeline with retirements on the horizon and growing expectations for more responsive public service delivery. We had, like every other government, I am sure, we had to go through the procurement process. We had to select from among one of three groups or three organizations who we thought would be able to deliver this package for us. So it was to be customized to meet the needs of the Virgin Islands Public Service. And out of that, we partnered with CARICAD. And then we launched what we call the Emerging Leaders Development Program. And we are so pleased to say that our expectations were met. We were very, very pleased with the result. The program, the participants were all engaged in virtual learning, leadership coaching, ministry-based projects, and cross-sector exposure. These experiences allow them not only to understand the theory of leadership, but to apply it to their daily roles. driving change from within. Very, very important that I say that part, because what I thought was so amazing was that the start of the program with the emerge, um, emotional intelligence evaluation. So it started from within. Am I the leader that I ought to be? And it grew as they looked at other areas. The results have been very, very encouraging, Dr. Parkes. 21 officers from wide range ministries completed cohort 1, 25 in our cohort 2, and we are currently going through cohort 3 in our Emerging Leaders Development Program with CARICAD. The program was highly spoken of as a game changer course, and one that every leader in public service should participate in. We observed, and we have been observing over time, and they have been speaking about it very much so, the strength that they got from attending the program and participating. We saw stronger decision making, greater interdepartmental collaborations, a renewed sense of purpose. And that one I really have to accentuate, a renewed sense of purpose for these participants in who they were and who they are, and the impact that they can make within the public service as career public officers and as leaders within the government service. Importantly, I must mention many officers have taken initiative in leading departmental projects, mentoring others, and modeling the core values of the public service. Some have even gone into new positions since they have done the course. The program has not only enhanced individual leadership, but it has also seeded a broader cultural shift towards accountability, innovation, and service excellence. These are the 3 areas that we are working feverishly to continue to improve within our public service. Now, as I look ahead, we are committed in the Virgin Islands to expanding this partnership with CARICAD. Plans are underway for even more cohorts to come on board, as we intend to move from senior managers and move it down a notch to our middle managers. And in actuality, Dr. Parkes, I have also sat in a session where the deputy governor is saying he wants courses of this manner to begin from entry when persons get into the public service. So very early we begin to see where and who are our aspiring leaders. By investing in leadership development, we firmly believe that is laying a foundation for resilience, responsive, and citizen-centered public service. So I really want to thank CARICAD, Dr. Parkes, who have been my contact person there. Really want to thank you for all who have been contributing to the success of our public service here and for the program laid out by CARICAD. Together, I truly believe we are building leaders who will lead with vision and serve with heart. With those words, I say thank you for allowing me to share this book on this program.
No, I mean, thank you, Dr. George. I mean, what an endorsement. And, I'm so glad that Dr. George shared it, because one of the things that we have found that has been also, which I must admit I would have omitted in my slide presentation, what has contributed to the critical success of the CARICAD Leadership Program. It is really when governments actually engage in strategic human resource and leadership succession strategies, right? Where it is that governments do the analysis and they recognize that, in fact, they are looking at things like, their retention rate, their turnover, their level of retirement. And there's some research that my colleague Roseman Warrington did around the region some years ago. And essentially what it found, just to put it in very colloquial terms, most of our senior leaders are going to be retiring. and are retiring or have retired in recent years. And so we have to really, really think about who will be the next generation of leaders. We can't just simply pluck people up and plop them into positions without making sure that they're fully prepared, not to lead as they led in the past, but prepared for what are the requirements for today and beyond. And so the government of BVI has engaged in that, and many other of our stakeholders and customers, clients, that has been the approach. So last year we did a leadership coaching intervention for all the deputy permanent secretaries in the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And again, that was a part of their wider leadership succession strategy, right? And so again, it's not just we're training people because it's good to train people. Yes, it's good to train people, but it is about being very intentional about the wider strategic purpose that it needs to serve. All right. So thank you once again, Dr. George.
You're very
Alison,
welcome.
let me invite you to unmute again and just to share your own perspectives.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. Lois, can you hear me?
I can.
So thank you. I am very humbled to be part of this exercise. And as somebody who have participated in this program, if I may, I think the program was for me very transformational and very life-changing. Yes, it was a very practical program. And so some of the tools that were passed on, it were easily implemented. You know, sometimes you go on training programs, and when you get back to the workplace, you're more confused than than before you entered the program. Some of the tools, you didn't really understand them, so sometimes you don't even sure how to implement them. So that's one aspect of the program that I really like to highly commend, the kind of practical approach of it. And then for me, it kind of, how should I put it, stabilize, help me to maneuver. At the time we had a change in administration, and it was very difficult. And so I always give praise to the program that it grounded me and it helped me to come over and to maneuver the challenging time. Also, the kind of personal awareness and personal impact the program had, like it caused you to focus on you, to focus on the type of a leader you are, and what can you become, you know? Initially, I must say I was a little bit hesitant. I didn't even think this program was for somebody like me. I thought I was up there. Until my cabinet secretary pulled me down and said, no, the program is for you, and I need you to apply, and I need your application this afternoon, because I had passed it out encouraging members of staff to apply. So that being said, I really want to compliment the program and encourage. Another aspect that I kind of strongly held to was that opportunity to discuss and to share experiences with your colleagues around the region. As somebody coming up in the public service, I always wonder, when we have to do something, you know, why we want to start from scratch. You know, what it is we can touch base with the person in St. Vincent or St. Lucia or even Jamaica or Barbados, you know, but to me, that was something that was absent, at least at my level at the time. And so that was one aspect that I was really happy for, and that had a good impact on me. Just the opportunity to be able to extend the network and be able to rely on, to touch base if something come up and you're lost and you're not sure where to go, that you can turn to your colleagues and ask if they experience this thing, what would they have done, you know, if they were in this situation. Yes. And now, as somebody who is involved in transmitting or passing on to leaders of the region, you can see that when some some of the people come on like they hesitant. They not sure, you know, and as the sessions go on, you can see the change. You can see the transfer or the transmission. You know, they get brave. They speak more open and more, should I say, without no fear. They feel relaxed, they feel comfortable. And some of them have indicated that this program has really helped them. It has opened their eyes. It caused them to focus on themselves. And for some of them, it's the opportunity to really reflect and try to put yourself in somebody else's position. You know, sometimes you're a leader and you're narrow. You know, you're just about you and you're focusing on you and what you can do, you know. But the program provides an opportunity for you to have a wider vision, a wider scope, and to look at how things can change. And as persons involved in leadership, we know leadership is to try to create or help people to be better of themselves and to help them to help the people that they lead to become better persons. So all in all, as I said, the program is transformational and is life-changing. It has impacted me both professionally and in a personal way. And Loy, I want to thank CARICAD for the opportunity to continue and to be able to just to share and to, you know, pass on some advice from the public service. So thank you.
Thank you to Allison. Thank you to Allison. And Allison really has been a powerhouse support. She's one of our executive coaches, but Allison also very quiet in the background, continues to support public sector transformation in her country of Grenada. So Allison, you know, much love and respect always. And so at this time, we just want to spend a few minutes. We allow for any additional comments or questions around this business of, you know, project sustainability and this regional success story. Any questions or comments at this time? In particular, I see quite a few of our alumni here, and so would love to hear from you. So Annette Williams Sylvester. Annette, you should be able to unmute. Go right ahead.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Hear you.
Dr. Parkes. I too want to agree with the last speaker, Miss I don't remember
Alison
her name.
Miller.
Yes, Miss Miller, that you know this leadership program has also been very transformational for me. It was a transformational and a life-changing experience for me in
Wait,
my personal life.
Annette, can you just
Yes,
share with everybody which country you're from and which program you did?
I am from the BVI,
Yes,
the territory of the Virgin Islands, and I took part in the Leadership Development Program. I was on the first cohort
yes.
that started last September to December. And I must say that it was, as I said before, it was very transformational for me. It was life changing for me because on a personal level, it has helped me, you know, to develop even more, as well as in my professional life in terms of having the responsibility of managing a team of about 29 staff here at the magistracy. It has helped me, you know, to understand the importance of communicating and collaborating with my colleagues, and you know, having effective teamwork and driving what we are doing to have positive outcomes. And so I really want to say thank you to you, Dr. Parkes, and your team at CARICAD. It has been a very rewarding experience for me, and so I just want to extend thank you And my prayer is that I would be able to take this experience and, help my colleagues, my subordinates, and everyone who I come into contact with, even whether it be on a personal level or professional level, and to extend what I have learned to them. So thank you once again. Thank you. It has been a very rewarding experience for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Annette, for your very kind words and feedback. Thank you. All right. So we still can take a few more questions or comments. You can either raise your hand as Annette did, or you could type in the chat. All right. Your comment or your question. You don't have to be shy. I'm just looking here for any other comments or questions at this time. No? If I may, let's say you must lay hands on people suddenly, but if I may lay hands on Pamela, Dr. Pamela Dutton, and I'm laying hands on Pamela because Pamela, I believe you have the distinction of having done the most CARICAD Leadership Development Programs, right? So Pamela was in cohort 7, right? Under the Caribbean Leadership Project. And then she did the Leading Change workshop. And then she came back and did the Transformation and Leadership Development Program. So there has to be a reason why Pamela did all of these programs. And so, Pamela, if you could share your own, and let me tell you something. You know, one of the good thing about Pamela, when something wasn't going right, she go and make you know, and it was comments, particularly from Pamela, that allowed us to even tweak that initial program that she did. So Pamela, love to hear from you, your own experiences of doing these leadership programs with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Parkes. Good morning, colleagues. When I did the first program, it was at a very interesting time of my life. I was going through a transition. And what was really important for me, I remember that first module, getting to know self. You remember that first module and how you lead, and how your personality impacts how you lead. And you had to reflect on you as a learner, you as a leader. And I found it, I remember, sorry, and I'm all over the place because obviously I was just called on, but I remember a session we had in Barbados. And we had to go, we were close to the beach, so we went down the beach and sat on the tree. And I was writing, but what was really curious for me is that I never linked my childhood to my leadership style. I never linked, the way that you were led, in other words, the way that you were led as a child impacts how you lead. And when I started to think about that, I was like, okay. And then there was so in all these training I've done, one of the things I've come across is that I'm very empathetic and very caring. That's the type of leader I am. And interestingly for me, it was because I kind of divorced myself. So although my childhood impacted in how I led, the way that it impacted is that it brought out things that I did not want to see. So for example, when I was teaching, for example, I had this really awful teacher that taught me when I was at school. And one of the things I did in my teaching was to ensure that I did not behave like her. So the question was why I did so much leadership things, because I could see the value. So when I did the workshop on about dealing with transition and so on, I don't remember exactly the name. Remind me of the name, Lloyd.
Leading Change Workshop.
Leading Change Workshop. I was looking at my organization where I work and concerned the fact that they were about to make a move into a new named institution and the things that they need to consider as they made that move. And I don't know if you remember, Lloyd, that the project I did was all around that move. So it was really that I was thinking ahead of what I needed, the skill sets that I needed. And even when I did the last one, I was thinking again, okay, well, I've done all this training and things have evolved so much. And I wanted to be at the cutting edge. And I think that is what the programs brought. They brought cutting edge knowledge. They gave you a time to really sit and reflect because you had to silence your phones and things like that. You had lots of reading and lots of videos and things that you would not normally do. So although you were leading before, the knowledge of why you lead the way that you lead, the knowledge of being able to identify your triggers, remember the above and below, and things like that. It helped me because going forward, I knew what my trigger was. And therefore, as opposed to just shooting my mouth off or send the email off, I knew that I needed to sit down and think about it. And I know I'm talking a lot now, although you called on me short. But another thing that it taught me as well was to listen, because I had this nasty habit of I was listening to respond and not necessarily listening, truly listening to what the person was saying and then forming my response after the listening process. So yes, I really must say, and I will talk about my coach. The last thing I want to talk about is my final coach, Alison, who really made me think about myself as a person. Because sometimes we get so caught up in being so caring for everybody else that we forget that we must care for ourselves first before we can be a true and effective leader. I hope I hope that I've answered your question and given some insight.
Oh, sure. Thank you so much, Pamela. Thank you so much. And I'm seeing some other comments here in the chat. So there's Vernanda Raymond, who was from cohort 11, Driven 11. And she says, no, Vernanda joined the she's from the Commonwealth of Dominica. And she joined the program right after Hurricane Maria. Okay. And I can remember Vernanda wondering, how is this going to help me? Everything is mashed up. My library is mashed up. She was head of the library service then. And it turned out to be, as she said in her own words in the chat, a very transformational program. And at the time, our island was recovering from the challenges of Hurricane Maria. This was a time. Timely, supportive, and life-changing leadership experience. Thank you so much, Vernanda. Um, and I can still remember Vernanda's Leadership Stretch Project, which was really rebuilding back the library service and building it back even better. And was really one of the most successful leadership stretch projects implemented out of the leadership program. Sean Monroe, who is now with the Jamaica Defense Force, he says, I am appreciative of the program for empowering me to be an authentic, firm, and compassionate leader, being able to identify my values and how they translate into a sense of purpose that has allowed me to impact numerous lives within my organization. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, folks. Well, we are going to just wrap up now. Thank you so much for being here and for being engaged. And hopefully, if there's some of you here who have never been in our leadership programs, we trust that you feel a little sense of I don't want to say jealousy, because that sounds as if, we have something you don't have. But guess what? It's very much accessible to you because we now have our call open now for our mid-level leadership development program. We're still accepting applications. The application deadline is July 4, right? And this program will start the second Thursday afternoon in September and run all the way every Thursday afternoon until the first Thursday in December 2025. The cost of this program is $2,000 US. And as the person said, it starts with you getting your emotional intelligence assessment completed and having that one-on-one session with your assigned coach to help you to develop the action planning from that, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, and covering all of those topics, areas that people talked about: leading self, emotional intelligence, listening as a leadership competence, looking at values and ethics, gender and diversity, leading for a citizen-centered service, being a generative leader, It includes, leading and managing change, introduction to project management, among other topics. Real value for money, a real opportunity to learn. And so Roger, our virtual producer, has put the link in the chat if you want to learn more about this mid-level leadership program that we're offering. And we're also going to ask Roger to put in the chat now the link to complete our webinar feedback poll. We always say feedback is a gift. And so we invite you to click on that link and to just give us your feedback. The link is there right now. You see there, evaluation poll. And we also want to hear from you what other topics you'd want us to cover. And so continue to follow us on our website, on our social media pages. Email us at info@caricad.net if you want more information, whether it is about our CARICAD Leadership Program, about some of the lessons learned, some of the final lessons learned around project implementation success, our technical assistance that can help you with whatever transformation initiative that you are undertaking. And so with that, and see in the chat the links to our various social media pages as well, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. So with that, I want to thank you all for your engagement, and I look forward to sharing with you, hopefully, in our next webinar before the summer break next month. Look out for the advertisement for that, as well as support our mid-level leadership program. If you have done the program before, not a problem. I'm not saying you have to do it again. Share it with others, invite others, encourage others. Share your testimonials with others. Encourage them as we build capacity, strengthen our public sector institutions to strengthen our economies. So with that, I thank you. Tune in next time. I am Dr. Lois Parkes from CARICAD.